In a world where gifts too often go unplayed, a humble carpenter tells a tale that will challenge his closest friends to confront their deepest fears, unlock the beauty within, and let their lives sing, before it's too late. As the sun descended, casting an amber glow over the rolling hills of Capernaum, a group of men settled in a humble stone house near the edge of town. Dust clung to their sandals and robes, evidence of a long day's journey under the relentless sun. These were Jesus' disciples, each carrying within them a mixture of anticipation and weariness. They had walked far, visiting towns and speaking to crowds, their hearts swelling with the promise of their mission but their minds still entangled with questions and uncertainties. The room where they gathered was simple, with worn wooden benches and a low table that held a meager meal of bread, figs, and olives. Each disciple held a unique story, a past that had shaped them, but in the presence of their teacher, they felt something larger pulling them together, a sense of purpose, though each interpreted it differently. Jesus sat in the center, radiating a quiet strength, his gaze serene yet piercing as if he could see into the heart of each man. The disciples watched him closely, a reverent silence enveloping them as they waited, sensing that he had something to share that would go beyond words, something that would settle the questions that had troubled them throughout their journey. As the flickering glow of a single oil lamp cast soft shadows on the stone walls, Jesus lifted his head and began to speak in a low, melodic voice. "There was once a woodworker in a small village," he started, his tone drawing the disciples in like a warm embrace. His words painted a picture of the craftsman's life, his dedication, his long hours in a quiet workshop, the scent of cedar and pine mingling with sawdust as he carved a lyre. This was not just any lyre, it was a masterpiece. Jesus described the delicate curves, the rich, dark wood, and the intricate carvings that adorned it, each line a testament to the woodworker's love and care. The disciples could almost see the instrument in their minds, gleaming in the sunlight as it lay on the workbench, its strings stretched taut in silent readiness. As Jesus spoke, his voice softened, conveying the woodworker's pride in his creation and his reluctance to let anyone play it. No one dared touch it, Jesus continued, for the woodworker believed it was too precious, too fragile. The disciples hung on every word, each of them connecting to the story in their own way, sensing that this was more than just a tale, it was a reflection, a mirror that would soon show them something about themselves. After Jesus paused, Peter broke the silence, his voice tinged with empathy. "Perhaps the man loved his creation too much, Master," he said thoughtfully, "and feared that it would be damaged if it were played." Jesus turned his gentle gaze on Peter, nodding slightly. The others shifted, each wrestling with their own reflections on Peter's comment. James, with a frown creasing his brow, spoke next, but what if his fear kept him from letting it fulfill its purpose? If it was never meant to just sit in silence? Slowly, one by one, the disciples began to share. Thomas confessed his doubt about his own abilities, wondering if he was truly worthy of his calling. Andrew admitted he feared being overshadowed by others. Mary, sitting quietly in the corner, expressed her deep-rooted fear of being judged. Jesus listened to each of them, his eyes filled with compassion, and as he listened, they felt their burdens lighten. The disciples saw parts of themselves in the woodworker, in his pride, his fear, his hesitation. In that room, vulnerability filled the air, and they realized that sometimes fear of failure, of imperfection, or of judgment was what kept their gifts hidden. They recognized the weight of their own insecurities and the ways in which they had been like the woodworker, holding back their talents, afraid to let the world see them as they were. With a distant look, Jesus continued his story, taking the disciples deeper into the life of the woodworker. He described the lyre, untouched, as it rested high on a shelf, gathering dust but shining under rays of sunlight that streamed through the workshop window. Passers-by would pause, admiring its beauty, murmuring amongst themselves about its elegance and wondering what songs it might hold. Jesus painted the scene with such vivid detail that the disciples could almost hear the murmurs of the villagers, feel the anticipation, and sensed the profound silence of the instrument. The lyre, despite its perfection, remained a mystery, its strings never vibrating with the touch of a musician's hand. Jesus' words hinted at the tragedy of unrealized potential, at the tension between beauty and purpose. The disciples felt the sorrow in the woodworker's choice, understanding now that there is an emptiness in a gift left unused. Their eyes shifted around the room, each thinking of their own lives, of the skills and passions they had hidden away or neglected out of fear or uncertainty. Jesus' words lingered, making them question the nature of their own gifts and whether they, too, had let anything beautiful within themselves remain silent. The next day, as the group moved through a nearby village, they encountered people along the way who had hidden their talents. They met an artist, once known for his vivid murals, who now painted only in his home, unseen by others, doubting the worth of his work. They met a musician who played his flute only in secret, fearing that his music was too simple, too unrefined for others to appreciate. And finally they encountered a poet, a woman whose words could move hearts, yet who feared sharing her poetry, believing her words would fall flat. Jesus spoke with each of them, gently, guiding them to realize the beauty and significance of their gifts. Through his interactions, the disciples began to understand that these people too were like the woodworker's lyre, holding within them gifts meant to be shared, songs that the world longed to hear. As they watched Jesus' compassion unfold, the disciples saw how small acts of kindness and encouragement could open a person's heart, freeing them from their own doubts and fears. The villagers' lives, their simple dreams, and their hidden gifts gave a new perspective to the disciples, helping them see the parable's message more clearly. That evening, as a storm swept across the hills, the disciples gathered under the shelter of an old olive tree, watching the dark clouds roll over the sky. Lightning cracked in the distance, illuminating their faces, each lost in thought. Peter was the first to speak, his voice barely audible over the rising wind. "Master, I am afraid that I am not worthy of this calling." His words broke the dam of silence, and soon others followed. James confessed his fear of failing to live up to the legacy of the prophets before him, while Andrew admitted he often doubted his courage. Each disciple opened up, pouring out their insecurities, the weight of their doubts pressing down on them as heavily as the storm pressing down on the earth. Jesus looked at each of them with kindness, his face soft with understanding. "You are more than your fears," he said quietly, his words as steady as the rain beginning to fall. "Trust that you are here for a purpose, even if you cannot see it." The storm raged on, but Jesus' words brought a calm to the disciples, giving them a small but enduring hope, a light that flickered against the darkness of their self-doubt. As the storm subsided, Jesus returned to his story, revealing the woodworker's final hours. He described the old man lying in his small room, frail and alone, gazing at the lyre on his shelf. Regret filled the woodworker's heart as he realized he had never let the instrument sing. Jesus spoke softly, his voice carrying a sorrow that echoed in the hearts of his listeners. The disciples could feel the weight of the woodworker's regret, the sting of a life half-lived. The woodworker's heart ached with the knowledge that he had buried his gift, letting fear silence the music that might have brought joy to the world. The disciples listened, tears filling their eyes as they recognized their own fears mirrored in the woodworker's final confession. Each of them felt the pang of lost opportunities, of times they had held back their gifts out of fear. Jesus let the moment stretch, allowing them to feel the full depth of the woodworker's sorrow, preparing their hearts for the wisdom he would soon share. The disciples' spirits were lifted the next day as they encountered a young boy playing a crude, handmade instrument. The boy's music filled the air with a simple, joyful melody, his face glowing with the pure pleasure of creation. The instrument was rough and unpolished, but it did not matter. The boy played with abandon, unafraid of judgment, unafraid of mistakes. Jesus turned to the disciples and pointed to the boy, his eyes filled with gentle wisdom. "It is not perfection that matters," he said. "What matters is the courage to let one's gift be heard." The disciples watched the boy, each feeling a lightness, a sense of freedom as they realized that their gifts too were meant to be shared. It was not about being flawless, it was about letting go of fear and allowing the beauty within them to flow out, imperfections and all. That evening, Jesus took time to speak with each disciple individually. To Peter he spoke of courage. To Thomas he gave words of assurance, and to Mary he spoke of strength. Each disciple heard what they needed most, a message of affirmation that lifted their spirits and reminded them of their unique purpose. In those moments they saw themselves more clearly, understanding that their gifts were given to them for a reason. Jesus' words were like balm to their hearts, soothing their fears and igniting a renewed sense of purpose. They understood now that they were each a lyre in the hands of their Creator, meant to be played, each song different but all essential. As they gathered for one last evening together, Jesus shared a final message, weaving together the lessons of the journey and the story of the woodworker. He spoke of the fleeting nature of life, of the importance of courage, and the beauty of embracing one's gifts fully. Let your life be a song, he told them, one that the world can hear. His words resonated deeply, filling each disciple with a sense of peace and purpose. They understood now that their gifts were not for them alone, they were meant for the world, a part of a greater harmony. With hearts full of gratitude, the disciples left, each carrying within them a new resolve to live their lives fully, letting their lyres sing in the world. This is end of the story. Comment Amen if you believe in Jesus' blessings. Please like this video and subscribe this channel for more Jesus story like this. May the God watch over you.